Welcome to the 2016-2017 NERSA Club Basketball Conference Captain's Call. Thank you for joining us tonight. You are in listen-only mode. I will be the only one able to talk. If you have questions during this broadcast, there's a chat function that you should be able to type your questions into. I will be periodically going through those as I go through this presentation, and then at the end there's also a portion for questions. So feel free throughout to get any and all questions that you have answered. To give you an idea of what we're going to cover tonight, we shouldn't be too long, no more than 30 minutes, depending on how many questions you have, but we want to give you an idea of what to expect in terms of the conference format, how many games you'll get, what the games will look like, some of the rules and general expectations. So to start off, the conference format, each of the teams within our conference can expect a minimum of 6 games. For the division that has 4 teams, this can be the minimum that you can expect. For the teams, for the divisions that have more than 4 teams, you can expect between 8 and 12 games, depending on the amount of teams and weekend play. Your team is currently committed to 3 weekends of play within the conference. That is 2 club conference events where you will have round-robin play against the other club teams within your division, and then 1 NERSA regional tournament of your choice. At that regional tournament, you will be scheduled against all of the other teams that join that regional tournament. You are not guaranteed to play your club conference division opponents. That gives you 2 chances to win your way to the national championship hosted by The Ohio State University this year, April 21st through 23rd. If you win your NERSA regional tournament, you can get your entry fee paid for at the national tournament, and if you are the division champion, then you can also get your entry paid at nationals. So what do your dues cover? A lot of you have already paid your total $933, and most of you have made at least 2 payments so far. So what are you getting for the money you're putting in? You get your 3 entry events. You also have all of the officiating and AT fees covered for those 3 events. So you won't be asked to pay out of pocket for anything on site. You also have insurance that is built in within that due, and then the winner for each division also gets their entry fee paid for. For those that have not completed the payment process, February 1st and March 1st are the payment deadlines for the installments of 311, and again, you've been working with me and NERSA to communicate your payment methods and plans, so continue to keep up the communication, and we shouldn't have any issues on the payment side. In terms of scheduling, each of you will be scheduled at least 1 week prior to the event date. You'll have a schedule, game time, opponents, etc. We are going to do our best to schedule teams according to their travel needs. So if a team is closer, they're probably playing earlier in the morning versus the team that has to drive further. They'll probably be playing later in the day just so that we can make those accommodations. Teams will play at least everyone in their division once. Most divisions, you'll play the teams twice through the conference play. We will play no more than 4 games on a day. You will most likely be scheduled for 3 games per day. So when you show up to an event, you can anticipate up to 3 games on Saturday and up to 3 games on Sunday, depending on other conference schedules and the ability to get you the games for the season. You may play 4 games in a day, but we know that that's a lot for your team. So 3 is what we will be looking at to schedule you to maximize your time while also getting you the most bang for your buck. We will only play on weekends. I know I sent out a date to the Midwest that said the 28th, and that's like a Tuesday. We will only be playing on weekends. So the corrected date is the 26th, and we'll get to that date in a second. But most of the play will be Saturday and Sunday focused. Very rarely, if ever, will we have Friday play, but we will focus heavily on weekends, no weekday play. And then again, I promise that you will have your games on IM Leagues at least 1 week prior to the event, depending on how proactive the host schools are. They may have those schedules up a couple of weeks in advance. Division champions. In your conference manual that you were sent, a lot of these details are housed, but wanted to go over how we are going to determine division champions. It's based on the highest winning percentage at the end of the season for each division. Based on Ties, we use the following tiebreakers. We have never had to use a tiebreaker, and we've never had to use a coin flip to decide the tiebreaker, so hopefully we don't get to that point, but you can see the various ways that we will conduct tiebreakers if two or more teams are involved. Eligibility and uniforms. A lot of the specifics of eligibility, including how many years they can appear on a roster and if they were former varsity, et cetera, all of those are outlined within that manual as well. The specifics of eligibility I am not an expert at. Keegan Ashby is, though. He is the chair of the Standards of Competition Committee. Any questions that you have about eligibility, or if we have to request an appeal to an eligibility, Keegan and his committee will hear your request and then determine whether or not that player is eligible. You, as the captain, have 16 players that you must decide who is going to go on your roster. Once those 16 players are on, they are locked on and can only be taken off if there is an ineligibility issue or an injury, and you have to request that the player be removed and a new player be added onto the roster. So please make sure that you choose those first 16 players carefully when you're building your roster, and communicate with me if you have any roster change needs. Your roster needs to be set before 2 weeks prior to the first event of play. Our first event isn't until the mid-February timeframe, so club teams have a lot of time to make sure that their rosters are complete and that the forms for each player are filled out. Each team should plan to bring light and dark colored jerseys with them to play. Host schools hopefully also have pennies on site in case we have the same light color, same dark colored jerseys, but it's always highly suggested that teams also provide their own. In terms of rules, these are the general rules that we will be following. They are very similar, if not exactly like the NERSA regional tournament and NERSA national tournament rules that you will be playing by, so we like to keep those consistent from host site to host site. So these are the rules we'll also be passing down to the host schools. You will be playing 2 20-minute halves with an 8-minute halftime. The clock stops on all whistles under 2 minutes of each half. You'll get 3 timeouts and no carryover. You'll get 1 timeout in overtime, and your overtime will be 3 minutes. No shot clock will be utilized, and we will be using high school lines whenever available. Sportsmanship. This is a big one for all of our teams. For most of our regular season play, it will be happening after NERSA regional events, just based on how the NERSA regional schedule played out, as well as the timing of the national tournament. So teams are likely to see each other at regionals and at state tournaments, and then see each other in regular season play. So we want to make sure that sportsmanship is at its highest throughout the season, because it can affect your team and or a player's ability to continue for the season. So below on this slide are all of the different ways that we are going to monitor and enforce sportsmanship. If any of these things happen, we will be addressing them, and case-by-case style, if we have to remove your team, you will have to appeal in order to get back into the league. We have never had to remove a player and or a team from the conference, so hopefully we keep sportsmanship in mind as we play and we continue to have that streak. These are the expectations that we have of you and your team. Commitment is the first. If your team isn't committed to playing, then you are going to make a very sour experience for the other teams within your division. So we ask that you communicate, and if there is, for whatever reason, you can't make it to an event or your team is no longer interested in competing, we need to know that as soon as possible so that we can make the proper accommodations for the rest of the teams playing. Again, communication is key. The only issues that we've ever had with the club basketball conference is club captains stopping their communication with the conference. So making sure that if you are going out of town or you as the captain have a really busy semester, that you pass that responsibility off to someone else on the team so that they can stay as up-to-date and informed and communicate with us as possible. The last two expectations, sportsmanship and feedback. Every year we make tweaks and changes to this conference to make the best possible club play experience for the teams that are involved. And without your feedback, we can't continue to make those improvements. So throughout the season, anything that you have that could help us improve, whether it be grow in teams or make your lives easier as captains or as teams, please pass that information along through the proper channels, via email, etc., and we would be happy to look at any and all suggestions. Your responsibility specifically as a captain, again, email communication. I will be heavily involved in emailing throughout the season. That will be our major form of communication. If you are not very good at responding to emails, I suggest that, again, you either get very good at responding to emails or find someone else on the team that will help you stay on top of emails so that we make sure everyone confirms schedules and our rosters are finalized. Again, as a captain, you're responsible for your team and coach behavior. We do recognize coaches in the club conference, and we treat coaches as coaches. So that means that coaches can be ejected, coaches have to sit on the bench after their sportsmanship has been addressed, etc. We expect that as captains, you are holding your coaches just as responsible as the rest of the players on your team for their behavior, and that we don't have any issues when it comes to their sportsmanship either. So, current divisions. We've had some shakeup in the last couple of weeks in terms of schools either adding and or dropping based on commitment, travel, etc. So, as it currently stands in our Women's South, we have Emory, Georgia Tech, and West Georgia fully committed, and Stetson is still exploring their participation in the league. They hope to finalize this week and give us details, and then we'll move from there. In the Women's Midwest Division, we have 7 teams, including Grand Valley State, Loyola Chicago, Maryville University, Oakland University, UW-La Crosse, UW-Madison, and UW-Milwaukee. And then in our Men's Southwest Division, we have Jackson State, LSU, Stephen F. Austin, Texas A&M, Tulane, and added this week, Southern University. They also may be interested in hosting. Speaking of our host sites, I know I communicated this week to the Southwest Division that UW Lafayette will be hosting, or UL Lafayette will be hosting on March 18th. They had to change that date to March 25th based on a previous conflict with an athletic event. So please make note of that change. The Men's Southwest host will be March 25th. And then Southern University, again, exploring the option of hosting as well. In the Women's South Division, Emory has picked February 18th for their hosting date, and we are working on a second host as well for the South. And then the Women's Midwest Division has 2 hosts. UW-Madison will be hosting on March 11th and 12th. There will be heavy gameplay on the 11th with a couple of games wrapping up on the 12th, so we hope to cut travel as much as possible for those teams coming in. And then Oakland will be hosting on March 26th. Again, you should have already communicated your regional picks to me. If that changes at all, we need you to communicate ASAP because we are going to be communicating to the regionals on your behalf about your attendance. The way it works, we will be cutting a check to the regional for your entry fee based on the dues that you paid to the conference. You are still responsible for filling out the forms needed for registration. So the team entry form, the player verification form, the player conduct form, etc. All of the things that the NERSA regional tournament needs from you needs to be completed for you to register. Just because NERSA pays for your entry fee does not mean that you've completed all of the required documents to register, and your spot could be lost to another club team. So please make sure that you know and are aware of the forms that are needed and submit those in a timely fashion to make sure that you are completely registered for your NERSA regional tournament. One more thing about the NERSA regional tournament, the roster for the club conference is completely separate from your roster at a NERSA regional tournament. You can take a completely new set of girls to your NERSA regional tournament, but the roster of 16 on your IM League's conference team, that is the team of girls that you have to play with for all of your club events. For the NERSA regionals, those are separate competitions, and you can take any set of girls on a team to there as long as they fit within the NERSA eligibility standards. So finally, taking a look at the next steps, for you as captains, payment plans, if they have not been communicated, again, you've all communicated them. It is now just making sure you follow through. Rosters finalized. We need the people on the roster at least 2 weeks prior, and we need their forms filled out at least 1 week prior to competition. You guys have a lot of time to get this done, so please don't let it fall by the wayside. Each player on your team has to have 2 forms completed before they compete, and again, it has to be done 1 week before they compete. Those forms include the release of liability and the player conduct. Those are filled out on IM Leagues. So as a captain, you invite a player to your roster via email. They then accept that invite. They go on to IM Leagues, and they can complete the forms under their profile. And then your club team should start for planning for the travel coming up this season. That was a brief overview of the club basketball conference and all of the things that you can expect. Again, heavy focus on communication via email and making sure that you as a captain are responsible for team conduct. Those are really all of the things that you have to do. Everything else the NERSA Club Basketball Committee will be taking care of in terms of organizing logistics, getting professionals and officials to each of your tournaments, etc. So at this time, if anyone has any questions, you can type them into the chat function. Otherwise, we have recorded this entire session. I will be emailing this out along with the manual again so that you all have this presentation to refer to throughout the season with any questions. And again, I am very accessible, so if anything comes up, please feel free to either email me or give me a call, and I would love to answer any questions that you have. If you don't have any questions, that is all we have for you tonight. Good luck with your season. We thank you so much for playing, and we can't wait to see each of you out on the court.